Before we dive into today's story, please take a moment to check out one of our friends' channels where amazing stories come to life. The link is in the description below. Hit subscribe and join us on this wild journey. I always believed I had finally moved past my demons. Thought I was okay. But then last weekend, everything I'd buried came crashing back. The fury I assumed was long gone surged over me like a tidal wave. Even safe at home with my fiancée, that burning anger for my ex refused to fade. For years I worked hard through anger management, convinced I was over it. Yet here I was at 39, feeling like I'd returned to square one. I was just 18 when I first met Nina. Back then, life was wild. I had been part of the Latin Kings since I was 13, always towing the line between trouble and survival. And then there was Nina, a church girl, someone I never imagined could even spare a glance my way. It was my grandmother's insistence at Sunday Mass that changed everything. The moment I saw her, I fell hard, convinced it was love at first sight. I even asked my cousin Luke, who knew her well, to introduce us. He warned, "You'll ruin her," but I couldn't let go. I started lingering on the church steps after Mass just to share a few words with her. Walking her home, talking alongside her, I found a spark of self-worth I'd never known. Before long, we began dating. Nina made me want to change, pushing me to ditch my gang life, earn my GED, attend church regularly, and envision a real future. For a year and a half, with her gentle hope, I started to become the man I once thought I could never be. But fate, as it tends to do, threw me back into chaos. One day in a store, an old enemy started mouthing off, and though I tried to walk away, a knife found my shoulder. In a flash, my control shattered. I lashed out, and before I knew it, I was cuffed, sitting in a cold holding cell, haunted by the thought that all I had built was crumbling around me. Nina was livid. My grandmother warned me that I'd come full circle. Even Luke shook his head in disbelief. Yet by some miracle, my public defender was convinced I was changing. I served just a month behind bars. In that dark moment, as Nina visited me every day, she dropped a bombshell. I was going to be a father. "I don't want our child growing up like we did," she pleaded, her voice trembling with raw emotion. I promised her I would change everything. We eloped, and I enrolled in trade school to become a mechanic, working relentlessly to secure a future for our little family. When Sienna was born, I thought it would be the happiest moment of my life. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. Nina hemorrhaged endlessly, slipping into shock, and the doctors had to perform an emergency double hysterectomy. I nodded silently through the chaos as long as she survived. In the ensuing months, as Nina recovered and Sienna grew to be my world, I vowed that our daughter would have a better life than the one I had known. I saved diligently, moved us to the suburbs, bought a house, even became a Girl Scout leader. I poured everything into raising Sienna at a private school, teaching her self-defense, and striving to be the ideal husband. A man molded by the TV dads I admired, someone who worked hard, loved fiercely, and shielded his family. For many years, I believed I'd nailed it. I owned my own garage, and even Luke had taken a positive turn, becoming a pastor, while my strong-willed grandmother was a constant, albeit stubborn, presence. Life seemed to have mended our fractured story. But then Sienna changed. At 13, she abruptly withdrew, rejecting my embraces, rolling her eyes when I expressed my love, and shutting me out whenever I asked about her day. Nina consoled me. "She's a teenager, Mario. Just wait. She'll find her way back." And so I waited for 2 long years, trying to summon patience and faith. When Sienna's quinceañera neared, I pulled out all the stops, spare no expense, to show her that I loved her. Yet nothing I did could erase the distance. The old rebellious part of me, a part that never backed down, surged close to the surface, desperate to demand respect. Instead, I sought solace in Luke, the pastor, confiding my frustrations, my doubts about my fatherly worth. He simply gestured for prayer and gently advised, "Let her be, Mario." I even planned a slideshow for the dance, carefully rescuing memories from an old tablet I'd spent hundreds to repair. I knew Sienna's passcode and promised I would respect her privacy, just retrieving our memories. But then I read messages, a text exchange between Sienna and Nina that shattered me. She openly rejected the idea of me being her father and confessed her longing to be with someone else, her real dad. My vision blurred. My phone burned in my hand as every word of betrayal etched itself into my soul. Nina's defense came swiftly. Mario raised you. He loves you. That makes him your father. But did it matter? Every betrayal cut deep, especially when it came from the woman I'd trusted with my heart and the man I'd once confided in. The shock of that conversation unleashed a violent storm inside me. Rage, sorrow, grief, and betrayal tangled into something dark. I wanted to lash out at both of them, tear apart the illusion of a life we'd built over 15 years. I left before my anger could consume me entirely. I pretended to be calm as I told Nina I had to focus on work and ensure everything was paid up. But instead of heading to the office, I drove straight to Manhattan. I made my way to my former public defender's new upscale office, a far cry from the gritty beginnings we shared. He greeted me warmly, recalling our early days together. But as he scrolled through the incriminating text on my tablet, the raw, seething dialogue between Sienna and her biological father, I knew there was no turning back. I told him without hesitation, I want to go full scorched earth. My attorney's face hardened, asking if I truly understood the magnitude of what I was about to do. I nodded resolutely. I had spent 15 years being a fool, and now it was time to burn everything to the ground. For the next 12 relentless hours, I executed every instruction to dismantle the life I'd painstakingly built. I secretly listed my business, canceled Sienna's private school payments, and closed down all future college accounts. I emptied the savings meant for her future and even prepared to sell our home. No one suspected the transformation unfolding behind closed doors. On the night of the quinceañera, everything went as planned, until it didn't. Surrounded by our extended family, Sienna's forced smile and Nina's worried glances cut deeper than any betrayal I'd experienced. That father-daughter dance became a stage for a final, crushing revelation. As the slideshow transitioned from cherished photos to screenshots of every text message, every cruel confession, the room fell deathly silent. Nina's face drained of color, Sienna froze in place, and Luke, once the man I trusted most, stared at me in a cold, accusing silence. In that moment, Nina pleaded, "Mario, please. I can explain." I fought to maintain composure. "Explain it in court," I said with a controlled edge. I had sacrificed 15 years of my life and was determined that none of it would go to waste ever again. The humiliation, the betrayal, everything had led me to that fateful dance. After the dance, I confronted Luke, and in a moment of seething fury delivered a punch that sent him sprawling like a sack of bricks. The shock rippled through the room. Nina and Sienna, both of them shattered, were ushered away by my grandmother's family, people who once embraced me, but now turned their noses up in disgust at the truth of what I had become. Even her own father, who had always harbored disdain for me, managed an odd apology, as if guilt could mend a fractured legacy. My grandmother, though, wasn't done lecturing me. She compared my life to Abraham's, urging me to rise above my failures. I snapped, "Shut the hell up, old woman," and stormed away, the bitterness of betrayal too raw to bear. Not long after, Nina appeared at my door, crying and begging for reconciliation, claiming it had all been an accident. A single lapse, she insisted, nothing more than a mistake. Yet when I asked how long she'd known about Sienna's true parentage, her silence said it all. In that moment, I realized that the life I'd planned for Sienna, the life where I'd be the unwavering, dedicated father, was built on lies. Consumed by rage, I expelled every ounce of betrayal. I denounced Nina, casting her out in a flurry of harsh words and slammed doors. Days turned into weeks. Nina's desperate calls and endless texts were drowned out by the haunting silence from Sienna. When word reached Nina that I had sold my business and put our house on the market, a home filled with memories built upon deception, she stormed in during an open house, screaming that nothing belonged to me anymore. "This isn't your home. You have no right to sell it," she cried. And potential buyers awkwardly dispersed as I stood, arms crossed, bracing against her fury. That day, she begged for help, for us to salvage a marriage that was already rotten. I scoffed, declaring that the house was nothing more than a shrine to my own mistakes. In the chaos, Luke reappeared, and I delivered another blow, a punishment I deemed long overdue for the man I once trusted implicitly. Nina's pleas for mediation fell on deaf ears as I pursued my course. Soon enough, the legal papers for our fast-track divorce were filed in Nassau County. The courtroom was a battleground of raw emotions. Nina's lawyer dragged up my past, digging into the gang days I'd left behind. But my attorney shut down every single attempt to tarnish the man I had become. "Your Honor," he declared, "this man has provided for his family, built a business, and changed his life forever." And so it went. Then came the settlement. My attorney laid out every unsavory text message, every hurtful confession from Sienna. We demanded that my name be stricken from her birth certificate, that her last name be legally changed, exempting me of any financial obligation as her biological father, a truth that now none of us could ignore. Nina was devastated, begging me not to take away the only connection Sienna had left. But I had reached the end of my rope. I recall the day like it was yesterday, my phone buzzing on Father's Day, Sienna calling repeatedly with apologies and reminders of the past. Every time her name lit up the screen, memories of betrayal and heartbreak flooded back. I sat in the gym, pouring out my anguish into heavy bag punches, trying desperately to empty the rage within me. Eventually, amidst the storm of my thoughts, I sent her one terse email. "What do you want?" No pleasantries, no warmth, just a stark question that encapsulated years of pain. In a twist I never expected, Sienna replied with a long, tear-stained message, apologizing for her terrible behavior and admitting how confused and manipulated she had been. She described how, when she first discovered I wasn't her biological father, she was overcome by anger and sought solace in the arms of someone else. Swayed by Luke's poisonous words about my past, she confessed that the night of her quinceañera had been a turning point, a moment where the veneer of our relationship cracked and left her yearning for forgiveness. I remember the phone call that followed, a lengthy conversation with her boyfriend, who in a gesture of surprising chivalry asked for my permission to marry her. I couldn't help but laugh, a rare sound amid so much pain, and agree. Soon after, as preparations for both our weddings loomed, we were forced to navigate a labyrinth of family wounds. Nina, struggling with her own turmoil and facing her mental scars, clung to the past with desperate calls and texts. Meanwhile, my own battle with anger raged on behind closed doors. Eventually, in a dramatic twist of fate, I found myself in Idaho, miles away from the chaos of New York, trying to rebuild my life. I opened a new repair shop, bought a modest house, but the scars remain. I took every step possible, therapy, anger management sessions, even rage rooms, to keep that incendiary wrath from taking control again. It wasn't until I reconnected with church and subsequently met Alara, a warm and understanding woman with her own painful history, that a glimmer of hope broke through the darkness. Alara and I fell fast, our souls understanding each other's scars. We poured our truths out, the betrayals, the regrets, and gradually, through her unwavering compassion, I began to accept that redemption was possible. A year into our relationship, she surprised me by announcing her pregnancy. My heart, once embittered and numb, lit up with a new sense of purpose when our son was born. Holding him, I felt a profound wholeness that I hadn't experienced in decades. Yet even as life seemed to brighten, our past continued to haunt us. I started reconciling with Sienna, our interactions bittersweet yet slowly healing. We took trips together, visited family ranches, and even shared the joy of dancing at our respective weddings. At my wedding, amidst joyous smiles and tender embraces during our father-daughter dance, I finally glimpsed the girl I had once lost. Sienna returned to me through her tearful, heartfelt apologies and the fragile hope of a future where we could heal. For months afterward, as we rebuilt our relationships, shadows from the past kept emerging. There were brazen confrontations, old enemies resurfacing, violent outbursts at supermarkets, and painful encounters with broken promises. I recall one particularly volatile day at my shop when an ex of Alara tried to provoke me. I nearly lost control, but the sheriff's intervention saved me from crossing a line I could never come back from. And then, in a moment as surreal as it was heartbreaking, a new twist emerged. My cousin's fiancé arrived with news about Luke's failing health, pleading that I get tested for a bone marrow match. It was a moment of reluctant compassion, a call to help someone I once loathed, even as my anger surged to the surface. Through a dizzying series of legal battles, emotional breakdowns, and raw confrontations, I slowly learned that forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. I began to see that holding on to deep-seated anger ultimately hurt not just me, but everyone I cared about. Therapy sessions, family meetings, and quiet moments of reflection on the porch finally started to mend the gaps. I even reached a point where I adopted Sienna legally, reaffirming that no biological twist could undo the love and years we had shared. As life took unexpected turns, weddings, new children, even tragedies like the loss of loved ones, the threads of our family story woven through betrayal, redemption, and hope became as intricate as they were painful. I saw my grandmother's tears when I called her for the first time in years, felt Nina's remorse after confronting her own demons, and witnessed Sienna's transformation from a distant, anguished teenager into a mature woman seeking a fresh start. And now, sitting here with my fiancée Alara by my side, a new chapter slowly unfolding, I ponder the incredible journey that led me from the grips of rage to the bittersweet embrace of forgiveness. It's a story of scars and second chances, a tale where pain and betrayal collided with love and redemption. As I reflect on those dark and tumultuous years, I realize that while I can never undo the past, I can choose to shape a future built on the lessons learned. Before we wrap up today's story, I want to thank you for sticking with us through every raw and painful detail. If this stirring journey resonated with you, even if just a little, please subscribe to our channel, drop a like, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Your support means the world and helps us keep sharing these powerful stories. Maybe one day when the wounds have healed and the anger has finally settled, we'll all be able to look back and see that every crushing blow led us to something more compassionate, more understanding. And as I continue to fight my inner demons, attending yet another anger management session, pouring my heart out in therapy, I hold on to the promise that healing is always possible, that redemption is never too late. Thank you for listening to this deeply personal story, a story about betrayal, loss, enduring pain, and ultimately the slow but sure road to forgiveness and hope. Remember, no matter how dark the past, our future is yet to be written. Stay with us, share your experiences below, and join our family as we navigate this complicated journey of life together. Until next time, take care, stay strong, and keep believing in the power of redemption.